I'd like to introduce Aydın Mercan. Is that? No, he'll tell me later. They'll tell me later. So Aydın is going to, from ISC, is going to make the case for DNS over HTTPS and about why built-in censorship resistance has tangible benefits. Over to you.
Hi, so I'm Aydın, and it doesn't work. And well, I am a bind engineer, and also I'm a cryptography student. But for this talk, these two aren't actually relevant. What's relevant is that one, I live in Turkey, so DNS and censorship is basically like goes hand in hand with my whole lives, and I think this kind of makes me see things a little different that I want to point to for everyone. But you know, why does this exactly require defending DoH? Because you know, everyone basically has a lot of complaints about it, and basically they're mostly you know, it interferes with blocking operations. It doesn't. It basically changes the privacy question, but doesn't really solve it all the way through. And also now you needed an HTTP parser, and like why? But you know, while we get lost in these three questions a lot, I think the built-in censorship resistance is kind of like overlooked. But because well, when the question of censorship comes up, we usually just think of like the most capable teams going after, say, dissidents that are at the most risk. But well, that's not really the case for most people that basically live under censorship. So we first need to basically have a proper mindset or a different mindset for censorship, because like when you hear censorship, it's basically a politically motivated, state-mandated task that's basically other people do most of the time, and with some noticeable exceptions. These are prevalent in like not so well-off countries, and by that I mean they don't have infinite money to throw at the problem to solve it, because censorship is actually really costly. When an entity wants to censor something, they basically have to ask themselves really hard questions, which is like, can you afford the activity lost? For example, a while ago, Instagram was banned for a week in Turkey, and it basically costed them like 10% of their whole e-commerce by volume. And also, like, second, you have the muscle to flex it. So, like, there have been multiple attempts to force an invasive inspecting certificate authority, but these have been pushed because, well, browsers have basically said that we will explicitly make this not work even installed by hand. And also, to keep this up, you have to get new equipment, train new personnel, try to get around the new fancy day of the bypass. And again, these people also want to enjoy the content themselves. I just take this as an assumption for now, because I don't want to get lost in like, what do I mean by censorship too much? And well, now that we can think about censorship, the question is, do we really need to care? We are DNS, we are not censor freedom, and I think the answer is yes, for multiple reasons. One, not everyone just like uses something like a VPN to tunnel all of their traffic. Multiple solutions exist that basically use, say, weird TCP tricks to full DPI systems, and these are actually really preferred among younger people because, well, it doesn't screw with latency too much. And speaking of latency, DNS is actually really sensitive to latency, and because you know the modern browser web world does like 1 million queries for every scroll. If you add if you add the VPN latency, even if when you have them, you will basically see the DNS latency with your own eyes. You don't even have to do some scientific measurements, and then not everything actually needs the DNS bypass. You just need a couple zones that you want to see. And well, why DoH helps specifically with this though? Because well, from outside it's TLS like DoH or even DNS script, because it's encrypted inside. Well, DOT and DNS script is kind of like asking a permission to have encrypted lookups because well, they stick out and you can just basically slap the head of that sticks out. So despite like being approximately DOT, DoH actually does a couple small things that help. Well, basically, first one is it uses the 443 port, which means that you can just block the port by port like you do with DOT, and it has the fake it has the ALPN values, so it assumes to be a web traffic, and also hopefully it's hosted with like big providers like say Cloudflare, and now you have to ask, do I want to block all the IP ranges of Cloudflare? And like, maybe not. But you know, despite these tricks being powerful, because we have seen huge adoption in DoH, especially in browsers, the traditional censorship techniques have shifted to DOH traffic, and these are actually really effective. And let's see how most of the censorship works. I think that's completely, but the major ones. One is that, well, despite like ideally being hosted for bit damage, usually what happens is that we have our like sexy endpoints like quad 9, 8888, and 1111, which is basically like a post-it note that says ban me, please. And well, because of this, most deployments can just like get blocked, and measurements show that if you have like a small niche server, it will usually bypass for now. And then, well, again, we have SNI filtering because during the client hello, we will say DNS quad9.net, which is basically also a big kick me sign. So basically, by making it look like web traffic, we get hit back by the bread and butter of web censorship. And then finally, no matter what you do, DNS traffic will approximately look like DNS traffic, which is basically like the final frontier of censorship, because you can always analyze the packets, even though it's as old as me. And getting around it basically means that you have to waste lots of traffic just to look like something else, which is not really scalable. And well, is this for nothing? No, I think a better future is possible with some existing developments and what can be done, maybe. And these improvements should ideally not make the life of traditional DNS deployments hard. So, well, we have talked about it before, but encrypted client hello, it basically gets rid of the SNI filtering, even though ECH isn't actually made with censorship resistance in mind. So it's kind of in a weird state where it can be backed off, even though the RF draft says don't fall back, because you know, people still want to access things. And well, let's assume that ECH exists. We can basically use the dot in ALPN because ECH also protects the ALPN values. So we can drop our HTTP parser if we can. Yay. But you know, if it's not, if ECH doesn't see anything, well, you can still forward your ALPN in non-traditional deployments, and it will make everyone sad, but still, it will mostly work. And then cryptographic obfuscation also deserves a mention, but because it's basically the theoretical solution, but then you're also, again, reinventing DNS script, but even heavier, like, and then finally, there's one idea. Basically, when you do oblivious DoH, you add in proxy and HPK to add layers in front of the resolver. But what if we add layers from the perspective? So we basically have a mechanism to discover SNI and address pairs. So that can be ignored if you want. So again, you can lie, or you can basically use it as an auto client discovery, not just censorship. And well, So when you look from outside, it has different SNIs and address pairs. And how can we do this? We could have a header in the DoH quest, maybe. We could have a new RR. I think that's an horrible idea, but it still deserves a mention because it's pure DNS. And also we could maybe add a service binding parameter. And it should mostly be okay, in my opinion, because you're just asking the resolvers zone anyway. So yeah, in conclusion, please don't ignore DNS censorship. It's relevant, and that's it.
Do we have any questions or commentary? I did think this would happen.
Ben Schwartz. Thanks for the lovely overview. I think that's a great summary of the state of affairs. I think one of my favorite thing that you mentioned was that small operators tend not to get targeted. I think that it would be wonderful to make it easier for people to run DNS servers and democratize DNS resolver operations a little bit. Not that it's tremendously hard now, but if you're not familiar with a command line, then you're probably not going to get bind running. I think we could do better than that.
Yep, I agree.
You're too tall. Would you mind going back to slide 3, I think it was?
Which one?
I think it was 3. And while you were doing that, I'll mention I was at the ICANN meeting in Istanbul a few months ago, and I was surprised at just how much stuff was blocked and censored from within Turkey.
Yes.
Like, it was interesting. Like, I couldn't reach my local newspaper. I couldn't reach a whole bunch of stuff. Some things worked with DoH, but didn't really change much because some of it seemed to be IP level stuff. But anyway, something I'll point off that, like the second bullet here, where's the privacy? Everything is offloaded to Big Corp. You point out people in this room can help fix that by just making some more resolvers run, like run DoH or DOT or something. You know, it is definitely a concern. You all here can help fix that.
Yeah, so take, from the perspective of censorship, privacy isn't technically important, but again, it's still a common mention that I see.
I see. I like the overview very much, and I also like that you point out that the differences between DOT and DoH from the outside view of the sensor are very small. So I hope that eventually with ECH we will get rid of these differences, and then we can rip off the HTTP from the DNS server. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you.
I can see that there is another question emerging from the remote conversation.
So a remote question from Hazel Smith. Thank you for sharing this perspective and reminding us that censorship is a real problem for real people and not just a hypothetical or an issue for dissidents.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Nope. Please give your thanks to Aydın.